Okay guys, I'm here with my 2009 Mini Cooper. I'm going to change the front shocks. I did the rear shocks several months back and learned a lot from that and make sure I don't make the same mistakes. The front's supposed to be much easier, so I'm glad I tackled the back and got that out of the way. So those are the ones in there now. I know they're probably busted, not working really well because they're the same brand as was in the back, which had no it could not even hold any weight on it at all. So I know every time I hit a bump, I'm smashing stuff. So I went ahead and sprayed the bolts. You got the lower pinch bolt and the upper nuts. And before I show you that, let me go ahead and show you what I bought to replace them with. So these are the new shocks that I'm going to put on. They're, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but they're made by Blisted. And they're normal ride height. It doesn't drop it anymore. There's a right and left on them, so make sure you get the right ones. There we come with the dust cover and the replacement nut and a bump stop that's built inside it. Along with that, I went ahead and I got a pair of suspension mounts that goes on top. Especially since this, they have a bearing in there. I decided to go ahead and get a replacement for that, and that comes with some replacement nuts to do the top. So it actually says these nuts that you use on the top should not be reused again, or this bolt up here should not be reused again. But if you get a replacement shock, it's going to come with one. So if you decide not to get a new one of these suspension mounts, you probably need to get some new bolts, nuts on the top, because it says don't reuse those. Let me show you the tools I'm going to be using. Since I went ahead and sprayed it with the BP penetrating oil and all the nuts and the pinch bolt on the bottom, I got my compressor spring, got a soft face hammer in case I need to knock off the bottom part, make it a little bit easier. The impact, but I'm not going to use that to break the nuts. I'm going to just go ahead and do it by hand because I always like doing it that way. Got my torque wrench, got some regular sockets. For the upper ones, you're going to need a 13 millimeter. For the lower pinch bolt, you're going to need a 22 millimeter. That's one on the bottom. And the one that's going to be, for at least for this one, it fits a 18 millimeter, but the one that's on there might be different. So I got those. Read all the paperwork. That was the mistake I made last time. I didn't read everything. So just make sure you read everything, what you're supposed to use and not reuse. So I went ahead and looked up for torquing. So those are the torque numbers for the front suspension. So I went ahead and wrote them down. So the upper mount bolts are 25 foot-pounds, 34 newton meters. That's 13 millimeter. The lower pinch bolt is 74 foot-pounds, 100 newton meters, 22 millimeters. The damper shaft nut in the manual says 47 foot-pounds, 64 newton meters, and 18 millimeters. But if you go to the sheet that came with it, since I'm up at 18 millimeter to put it on, it's bigger than this. So here it says at least an 83 foot-pounds. So basically, when you put this nut back on, just put it on really tight so it doesn't come off. It does have locking on it. So that's the advice there. Okay, we're back at the car. Those are the three upper mount nuts that need to be taken off with the 13 millimeter, I believe. And then let me show you down below. So here you see there's two cables that need to be taken off the strut. So I would pop those off. Probably wise to go ahead and take a picture of that so you remember how it goes back on, just in case. Back there's the pinch bolt that needs to be that takes the larger nut to take it off. I sprayed that. I did spray around it to make it easier to slip off. One note in the manual says to make sure when you put that bolt back in, it's inserted from the rear. So that means the nut goes on the front and the bolt goes in from the back. And so let me go ahead and take out the cables and start doing it in the order the manual says. Okay, here's one I forgot to mention. I was looking back at the manual. You need to take off the stabilizer linkage off the strut, and for me that's a 16 millimeter right there to hold that one. It looks like there's almost like an Allen key there on the back this side to keep it from spinning, but we'll see how it goes in taking it off. Okay, I was right. You need an Allen key to take off this, to help hold it or spin it, to take off this nut. The way I did it was I used a box wrench to hold this nut and turn the Allen key to unbolt it, because there's not enough free play to be able to do this with the nut. So use this to hold it, use the Allen key, spun this until it came off. Go ahead and take off these cables, the two cables, so that way it's easier to work around. So I got that off. Next step is, I believe, is the top bolts, but let me double check. Okay, I got the bottom one off with using an 18 millimeter. They say to support this whole assembly so it doesn't come crashing down. So I got a piece of wood underneath it. I can see that it wants to drop a little bit, so actually take off the bottom, the pinch bolt nut off before you do the top. So let me do the top now. Okay, yay! I got off the driver's side assembly, strut assembly. One of the things you need to do is, at least for these old ones that were on here, they're not originals. So I don't know if yours has it or not. They have this piece right here which actually goes between the pinch part and the bolt goes, this bolt goes through it, so you cannot drop it unless you pull this bolt out. Now when I was loosening everything up, it seemed like I could not get this out because it was too long, even though as far as I would drop this, it seems like it would not clear this. There was like, just seemed like there was not enough wiggle room to get it out. So I was about to go ahead, let me see if I can do this, take off this linkage right here, the steering linkage. So as soon as I put this on here and kind of wiggled it around, not taking it off the nut, wiggling around and making this thing wiggle, the whole thing kind of like decided it wanted to fall. So it dropped, and I was able to clear it out, drop it out, take off the rest of the nuts on top, loosen it up all the way, and the thing just popped right out. So let me go ahead and get this on my bench, get the spring compressors on it, and change it out to a new one. Okay, here's it on the bench. So obviously this is the correct one that goes on this side, because the other one's a mirror image of it, which goes on the passenger side. So I'm going to use my spring compressors. Got two of these. Go ahead and compress it so I could take off the nut underneath this dust cover. Okay guys, I got the suspension mount off. This was using a 21 for this shock. It does have a Torx, I guess, to keep it from spinning, but I'm not sure how you would use that with the socket set because it's so deep in there. You can't do them both at the same time. But lucky I had my impact wrench and I was able to break it loose. So there it is. We'll swap it out and put it back together. Okay, don't forget to transfer the lower rubber piece that was on the old one to the new one. You'll see that It's actually keyed. There's a slot there, and there's a little nub pin there. The slot goes here, and the other piece goes in that hole, and then that's how it sits in there, nice and neat. I probably should have bought a new one of these top caps where the spring sits on, because you can see there's some rust on this one. But I'm just going to go ahead and reuse this one. So if you change out your struts, go ahead and get a top one of these, because most likely there's some corrosion in it. Okay, here's the new shock. The whole thing reassembled. I could not use my 22 millimeter to put that nut back on because the impact socket's the walls of it is too thick. So I had to use a regular socket to get that on. I think the final torque, it's going to torque it down after it's in, but get it as snug as you can, because I noticed you can't really torque it when it's like this. It's because this shaft wants to twist a little bit. So I think it's when it's all in, the best thing you do is get as tight as you can, and then double check the torque after it's in. So I'm going to drop this back in and finish it up, at least this side. Okay, I got a couple nuts up here to keep everything aligned. Notice that it's keyed. Go ahead and do that. Then you should be able to slip in the bottom part. What I found out is it's going to be coming in at a weird angle like this. So you kind of like turn the whole knuckle thing steering to get it aligned. Then once you're able to get it aligned, it's going to be a pain in the butt trying to slide it on because this one's painted and everything like that. So what I guess you see it on TV a lot is just jack it up. Put a piece of wood underneath there and start jacking, and then it'll slide on. But before you do that, before you start jacking up, make sure this piece is aligned with the slit in the back for where it pinches. So you gotta make sure that's aligned before you jack it up, otherwise you'll probably screw that up. Okay, at least for this shock, I know it's fully on. To be able to get the bolts on is when it's already flush with that lower bracket at the bottom right there. So when butted up against that, I was able to slide the bolt in from the rear. Let me get the nut on that and torque everything down. Okay, top's torqued to 25 foot-pounds, and I'm going to go ahead and do the pinch bolt on the bottom. Okay, I tightened the lower pinch bolt to 74 foot-pounds using the torque wrench with my 18 millimeter socket. Okay, this nut that goes back on the strut from the stabilized linkage should be, I have to look it up, 41 foot-pounds, but I'm not sure how I would do that since I have to hold the middle with an Allen key. I broke down and actually used my low power impact to go ahead and get that nut on there faster. But by turning the bolt in the middle with an Allen key bit. So let me see if my crow's feet sockets fit on that, and I might be able to do that. Okay, this is what I found out to be able to get that one tight enough. If you get it tight enough, that middle piece won't spin. So just go ahead and get it as tight as you can, then go ahead and torque it. Okay, here's it with the new strut in. Got the pinch bolt torqued down, 2 cables back on, the stabilizer linkage back on, torque that down. It's all together. Still have that rubber seat there. Make sure I put that on the upper side. Okay, on the upper side, torque the 3 bolts down, nuts down, and I still have the cap to put on, but I'm going to torque that middle one down first because I couldn't do it on the bench. Okay, I'm done with this side. Torque the top, torqued everything, double checked it. So put the wheel back on this side and go ahead and tackle the other side and take it out for a test drive. Yay, the other side's out. It went by much faster, especially since I didn't have to film. And I followed the steps I did for taking out the driver's side one. So it's nice, went smoothly. I did notice when I had to don't need this anymore, boot from the other one. I did notice when I had to clamp it down, I had to readjust these on that other one I was doing, the driver's side one. It's because I wasn't getting enough compression to be able to get all the stuff back onto the new strut. And that's because that one actually has more, it's actually not, it works, it's longer, in the sense that this is not even holding anymore. Let me show you. Here's the old one out of the driver's side, and basically just push down on it with one hand and compress it, so it's not working. So when I actually had to use this, I had to compress the spring even more than when I took it off, because I have to be able to fit the new one on. Okay, so let me go ahead and disassemble and assemble the new strut. Well, I'm glad I bought new suspension mounts, because this one is busted. You see that little cover came off. This one doesn't look as rusted as the one that was on the driver's side, so that's good. You can see some rust when it comes through the holes. So let me go ahead and pull it apart and reassemble. Okay, reassembled. Passenger side strut went on pretty simple, straightforward, no problems. So let's go ahead and get it back onto the car. Okay, this is the bolt that goes on the pinch. I forgot to mention, it's very important to always clean your bolts. So I got a wire brush here, brass wire brush. Always clean those. Any bolts that you're reusing, including your lug nuts, always clean them off before you reinsert them, because if you get any gunk in there, it'll really start to bind. So it's important you clean those before reinstalling them. Okay, that took me about 15 minutes to finally get the jack in the right spot to be able to get underneath here, to be able to push up to get it to slide in. So basically, if you look at it, I have the wheel turned all the way like toward the right almost, which allows me to get a vertical, alignment with this from the jack to be able to push it in. I was trying all different turn directions, and this side, the front side, jack on the back side. Finally, I think this is because of the angle it's going in. If you turn it this way and jack it up, it'll slide right in. Don't forget to line this up, this tab in the back, before you push it all the way in. Okay, remember that bolt goes in from the back and the nut goes on the front. Make sure you put it back in the right direction. Okay, driver's side completed, everything torqued down, hoses reconnected, tie, stabilizer tie thing, majiggy linkage, reconnected, torqued, bottom one torqued, top one torqued, middle one torqued, these three torqued, and cap put back on. So let me put the wheel back on, take it out for a test drive. So I just came back from a test drive. Oh, the car feels so much better. After changing the rear ones 3 months ago, it seemed like the rear ones didn't do much, because I was like it was still clunking a lot every time I hit a bump or something, and basically it's because the front ones were worn out too. So front ones hits the bump first, vibrates through the whole car, makes it feel like the back ones aren't doing anything. But since the back ones are changed, the front ones are changed, it feels much firmer and going over bumps and stuff. So yeah, maybe the advice there is, if one set is worn out, maybe you should change all four. But drive it around and change yours out and see if it works. Hope this helps you.